In this video, I'm going to show you how to cut and install crown molding. And we're going to do it right now. So here I am in my living room, and I got this all mudded, sanded out, and I'm going to do some crown molding before I paint. This is the style I'm going to be using. There's a ton of different styles and sizes. This one is the right price point for me, and I like the look of it. I've installed it a bunch of times, so yep, that's what we're gonna do. In case you didn't know, crown molding is the molding that goes between the ceiling and the wall. So you need to determine which goes against the wall and which goes against the ceiling. So for this stuff, this goes on the ceiling and this goes on the wall. Just like that. And basically what you want to do when you install this stuff is try and get these ends so that they're flat against the wall and the ceiling. So something like that is not flat, so it'd be like that. And it doesn't have to be absolutely perfect, but you want it as close as possible. So that's the proper way to install it. Now you're gonna need a chop saw to install this stuff, and I would recommend a bigger one than this because I'm gonna need to hold the crown like this, and it just barely touches right here. And it's actually a little dangerous doing it this way, but I'm gonna be very careful, and I recommend, like I said, a bigger chop saw. But we're gonna do our first piece. I like to start on the wall that's longest, which is this one right here, and it's, I think, 19 feet. These come in 16-foot lengths, but I ended up getting them in 10-foot lengths, because even if I did a 16-footer here, I'd still have a break right there. So if my break is back here, it's no big deal. And if there's breaks in other locations, it's fine. I can caulk it in and paint it, and it'll be fine. So I like to start on the longest wall, which is this one. So the first piece is the easiest. All I'm gonna do is, I know I have 10 footers, so I'm gonna measure to the wall where I wanna butt it, right here, and measure it to the closest stud. You can see this is another reason I didn't paint yet, so you can see where the studs are. And I wanna go half on one of those studs, so I'll be able to get a nail at an angle into the stud. So I'm gonna measure that piece and cut my first one. Take my tape, butt it to the wall, and it helps to have two people when you're doing crown, but I want to show you that you can do it by yourself. 109 is my measurement. Just gonna cut it straight, go all the way to the end here. Like I said, it helps to have two people, but you can make it work. Cut this straight. And measure 109, make my mark, 109. Now some people, when they do a seam, or they butt these up, they'll do a 45-degree angle. I don't like doing that because when it shrinks and when it cracks and the caulking cracks, you can see it a lot more if you have a diagonal line like this. Some people think it hides it, but I think just the straight butting these two together for something like this works better. All right, we can install our first piece. I'm gonna go towards the middle of this piece. I have my gun with me. And just butt that to the wall. And then remember how I showed you the flat points need to meet the wall and the ceiling. And I'm looking down there, that looks pretty good. This looks pretty good here. So I'm gonna do one nail into the ceiling, and you can find your strapping. So one nail is gonna do it. And then you can do one nail into a stud. So right here with a stud, and right here with the strapping. And over here, you can see the stud right there, and I'm half on. Now before I go nailing this off, I want to show you a trick to making sure this stuff is good where it is. So typically what I find people having the most trouble with crown is inside corners and how to actually match these up, because you can't just, you know, do something like this. It just doesn't work. So you end up coping. So what this does is, here's your inside corner, and you take this piece and you butt it up like that and make a nice inside corner. And you can caulk that in and make it nice. So what I like to do is, before I nail that off, the reason I don't want to nail that off yet is because I want to take this piece and match it up to make sure that I have that other piece at a good angle for this cope to work out nice. So what I do is I'll take some extra crown, I'll make a left-hand cope and a right-hand cope, and then I also have outside 45s, so I'll make outside 45s so that I can match those up when I do those. So here is how you cope crown molding. And you would think you want to cut it like this, but in actuality what you do is you cut it upside down and do a right-hand cope. So turn this 45 this way, match this up. Now picture you want to hold this flat and this flat against here. Picture this being the ceiling and this being the wall, so that you can get a good 45. Okay, and you'll have something that looks like that. And now you want to cut this. This is actually called a coping saw, and this is what it's used for. I like to start right here and try and keep this little piece of material on the bottom. Just be real careful. Sometimes that breaks off, and that's fine because you can just caulk that in. And you want to take your saw and really angle it underneath here and just follow this profile all the way down. Okay. And when you're done, you should have something that looks like this. That's a right-hand cope. So now on this piece, where I have my right-hand cope, I'm going to do an outside 45. You cut it the same way, but this is going to be the 45 that you're going to keep. And it looks like that. So now I have this cope and this 45, and I'm going to cut the opposite 45 and the opposite cope so I can have these pieces to match up so I can nail these off as I go. So in this corner, take my cope and line it up. That actually looks pretty good, but I want to make sure it's tight There we go. It's pretty good. Double check. Don't worry if your cope isn't absolutely perfect. That one's pretty good, but there's a gap at the top. Not every cope is gonna be perfect. And now I can use this, put nails in the corner and nail this whole thing off. Now down here, make sure, like I said earlier, it's even against the wall, even against the ceiling. This piece is good. I already have my cope cut for this end, and I'm gonna do this piece here. So when I measure this, I'm gonna hold my tape to the top here and measure to half on a stud wherever I'm gonna have my break. Now on this side, on your cope, see, no cope is gonna be perfect. If you wanted to redo that, you could, but that's fine. You wanna hold this here and then measure and make your line down here. Now, hold this up. Make sure my cope is good. Looks pretty good. Okay, now I'm gonna take this piece and butt it up there. And I got a corner here, very small corner. And what I'm gonna do is mark the back side of this against that wall so I know where to cut my 45. So it'll look something like that, marking on that wall. And then do the same thing here. This is a really small piece, but I have that cut already. So I marked right here, and like I showed you how to cut the 45 on the chop saw, and this piece is gonna go right here, and I can take my other piece and line it up and match it up and make sure those line up. Then I can take the actual piece with the 45 and this small piece and nail it in. All right, so I've decided that that chop saw was not that safe. This has a much bigger fence here. That'll help me. That's much safer. It was just holding on by a thread with this thing, and I don't want to risk that. So I marked my piece up there, right here, and I'm going to cut that 45. That's a much safer saw. Now I got my little piece. Make sure this is good. I'm gonna nail that right there. All right. And with any outside corner, especially one this small, I always glue this right here, and I'll put some glue right here and here. Just put a couple of pin nails in it, very carefully in the corners here. There we go. Looks good. And if I was gonna continue the crown, I'd just check this. That looks perfect. So a couple things here. If you can't find studs, like this is all new, so I know exactly where the studs are. If you can't find them, well, this is a soffit, so I know that up here somewhere there's going to be some framing. So I put long nails in the middle here at an angle to get up into the framing. And as long as you get a little bit of nail into the wood and then caulk it and paint it, you should be all set. Another thing is if you have doorways, the studs will typically go all the way up. You should be able to get some on the bottom, and if not, you can do the same thing with the top plate. There should be a top plate there, and get some long nails in there. Or you could find one piece of strapping and then measure 16 inches off of it if it's framed 16 inches, and the same with if you find a stud in the wall. Typically not over a door because these are framed differently, but if you find one stud, you should be able to go 16 inches from that nail. Also here, what I should have done is, so I cut this piece, I put it in, and I put my smaller 45 piece that I made in here to make sure this is good, and I nailed it off. What I should have done is also cut this piece and made sure that it was good, because now measuring is going to be a little more difficult. But I have the cope cut that goes right here, and I can either hold it like this and carefully mark the back side like I've been doing, or I can show you another technique. I can take my tape measure and then measure to the corner, and it should be the same as down here. So this is 10 3/16, and I'll show you how to mark that. Hook on like this to where that piece goes, and mark 10 3/16 right here. And then I can take a square, take a little speed square, and just make sure it's on there nice and even. And I can make a line right here. Like that. And then I want to make sure that I mark the orientation. So if I hold it the way that I know it needs to go, I know that this, I've already marked it, that's the way this 45 needs to be cut. And remember, you want to cut them opposite or upside down. I know it's a little confusing, but now I have a nice line right on the top of here, and I want to make sure to cut on this side of the line. So when I bring my saw blade down, actually that's about perfect. Make sure you cut on the opposite side of that line. Just like that. Now we come to our last piece, and I always try and make sure that there's a small piece, especially if I'm going cope to cope like this. So the way to do this is to put your tape here, just like we've been doing, and then measure to the same place on that side. So we're gonna do 33.5. And just a side note, I'm actually tearing this wall down eventually so I can continue the crown all the way through, get rid of that round doorway. So I'm not too concerned with something like that. I probably would have cut a new piece, but I can caulk that in and it'll be good for now. So then what you want to do is have one cope cut, doesn't matter which side, and then you want to measure the same spot right here, 33.5. Make that mark, and then the orientation is going to be like this, but it's going to be a cope. So make sure you cut it right. Here's my mark. Orientation goes that way. So turn the saw like this. Now this is kind of a tricky cope because the mark is down here. It's easy when it's up here. Well, it's kind of hard when it's behind here. But right here is easy, and you kind of have to bring the saw down just start cutting it long like this. Once you're past this space here, you know that you're not gonna cut past this line this way. So hold your base out there and cut. About that much. Move over, cut. That looks pretty good. And then you can coat this and throw the last piece in. Boom. Nice. Nail it in place. Okay, that's it. All the crown is done. It looks great. I filled in the nail holes and caulked in most of it. Now I just gotta paint it. Once I paint the walls and the ceiling, I'll be good to go. So I hope you enjoyed this video, or at least I hope it took away some of the mystery behind crown molding, and I really hope it helps you out. If you want to see more of my videos, you can click here and here-ish and check those out. Make sure to leave a like and a comment and subscribe if you haven't already. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.